And if you're watching online, we just like to ask that if you would comment the town or city that you're watching from today so that we know who is with us. We would appreciate that. Just comment the name of the town or city that you're watching from. All right, thanks. Okay, at this time, the kids are dismissed for their lesson. All right, so have fun, kids. Have fun and learn a lot. All right, and for those of us who are in here, we'll be in John chapter 10 today. John chapter 10, if you want to turn there. All right, John chapter 10. So, how many people in here are parents, even if your kids are grown and out of the house? Parents? Let's see, show of hands. Okay, we got some parents in the house. All right. Maybe we have some people who are going to be parents someday and don't even know it yet in the room. All right, we're going to start a family later in life. Okay. But I found these things about parenting, and I thought they were pretty funny. Things to think about as parents. You spend the first 2 years of their life teaching them to walk and talk, and then you spend the next 16 years telling them to sit down and shut up. That's pretty ironic. All right, number 2, grandchildren are God's reward for not killing your own children. It's true. Number 3, mothers of teens now know why some animals eat their own young. Number 4, children seldom misquote you. In fact, they usually repeat word for word what you shouldn't have said. Isn't that true? Did you know, number 5, the main purpose of holding children's parties is to remind yourself that there are children more awful than your own. It's true. Number 6, we child-proofed our homes, but they still keep getting in. That's a problem. Advice for the day. Be nice to your kids. One day they'll choose your nursing home for you. Yeah, something to think about. And finally, if you have a lot of tension and you get a headache, do what it says on the aspirin bottle. Take 2 tablets and keep away from children. That's pretty good. So I don't know about y'all, but man, I have some challenges as a parent. I have moments where I'm like, I don't feel like I know what I'm doing. I have moments where I feel like I know I did the wrong thing. I didn't make the right decision. I didn't say the right thing. Anybody else relate with me on that? Like, parenting is hard, isn't it? Parenting is really, really hard. It's a challenge. It's a struggle sometimes. Thankfully, we have the Bible and God's wisdom to guide us. And so we're going to be looking at this concept of parents as shepherds. And some of you may think that's interesting. What does that mean, parents as shepherds? Well, parents are leaders, aren't we? We're leaders in our homes. And one of the pictures in the Bible for people who are leaders is shepherd. That's one of the pictures it gives. If you're a leader, it's compared to that of being a shepherd. Now, some of us may not be very familiar with what a shepherd is or what a shepherd does. I've never done any kind of shepherding work in my life. Never done it. But I think most of us have a pretty good imagination. We've heard of the concept of what a shepherd is and what a shepherd does, that we can imagine well enough, you know, this comparison, right? Can't we? And so, as we begin this series, Parents as Shepherds, I want to point out that these concepts that we're going to learn today could be used for any type of leadership role, whether you're a leader in a church or a leader of some kind of business or, you know, whatever kind of leadership role that you might be in. These principles would work for you just as well. So if you're sitting there and you're thinking, well, I'm not a parent, this lesson isn't for me, or maybe you're thinking, you know, my kids are grown and they've already left the house, don't worry. These principles will apply even if your kids have grown up and they're adult children now. You can use these principles just as well. They still apply. Any kind of leadership role. So, let's imagine, even if you've never been a shepherd, you might know what a shepherd is. What does a shepherd do for his sheep? Somebody give me one.
Protect them.
Protect your sheep. Yes, very good. If you're a shepherd, you're supposed to protect your sheep. What else? Lead them, yeah. They need to know where to go, right? You're leading them on to the next, maybe they've grazed and used up all that pasture. You need to lead them on to the greener pasture, right? Lead them where to go. What else? Feed them and give them water. Yes, exactly right. So we need to feed them. Feed them. Sheep are not the smartest animals. They need a shepherd to guide them to where the food is and feed them and give them water. Okay? Any others? So you guys are hitting all the ones I got. I had lead the flock, protect, feed, and then I had tend to their wounds. So if they get hurt, right, you need to bandage them up. Bandage up their leg, they got snagged or whatever. They're bleeding, bandage them up, tend to their wounds. So here's the question. If this is what a parent is supposed to do as a shepherd for their kids, if you will, are you doing those things? Are you doing these things for your kids? Are you leading them in the way they should go? Are you feeding them, which I'm going to say is teaching them as a way of feeding them? Are you protecting your kids? Are you watching out for them and protecting them from harm, from getting off on the wrong path that might take them on a hurtful path? Are you tending to their wounds? And it might be really easy to look at it from just a physical standpoint and say, yes, I'm doing all those things. I go to work, I get a paycheck. With my paycheck, I buy my kids food, I put a roof over their head, they have everything they need, check. I got it done. But how many of us know that kids have more than just physical needs? Don't they? They also have mental, we need to care for their mental state. They have emotions, emotional needs. They have spiritual needs. My goodness, let's not forget their spiritual needs. And we're in charge of that too, of taking care of their spiritual needs. It's a balancing act, trying to do everything, isn't it? It's a balancing act. I feel like a juggler sometimes, and I'm dropping the balls. I'm not catching all of them. I can't keep up with all this stuff that I'm trying to do. But we've got to try, nonetheless. Today, we need to talk about leading our children in the ways of life. We need to show them the path that is good. And we need to teach them about the path that is full of danger and is going to get them hurt. We teach them how to walk, how to gather food, how to feed on the Word of God. That's one of the things we're supposed to teach them. And that's a heavy responsibility to carry, isn't it? Yes. But with God's help and by God's grace, we can do it. We can do it. We must lead our children down the path the best we can. So I'm going to tell you one of the biggest keys, and you may already know this, and if you do already know it, you can just say amen, or I agree, that's right. But the biggest key to leading our kids as shepherding them is relationship. We have to lead them through a strong relationship. John chapter 10, Jesus was the good shepherd, he called himself. In fact, I'd say he was the best shepherd that ever walked this earth. And one of the things that he said in John 10, verse 1, he said, "Very truly, I tell you, Pharisees," those were religious leaders of Jesus' day, "I tell you, anyone who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate, but climbs in by some other way, is a thief and a robber. The one who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all of his own, he goes on ahead of them, and the sheep follow him because they know his voice. But they will never follow a stranger. In fact, they will run away from him because they do not recognize a stranger's voice." In other words, they don't have a relationship with that sheep. Let's go to verse 14. "I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me. Just as my Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. I have other sheep that are not of this sheep pen. I must bring them also. They too will listen to my voice. And there shall be one flock and one shepherd." The key to being a good shepherd is having a strong relationship with your kids. By the way, some of you are like, "I'm not a parent." Well, maybe you will be someday. You should be taking down notes and tucking this away for the future so that you know it ahead of time. Maybe some of you are grandparenting your kids. Maybe some of you are raising your kids as grandparents. And this is for you as well. It's all about relationship. Jesus said, I know my sheep, and my sheep know me. The sheep know the shepherd's voice. They know his voice. And a good shepherd knows the sheep. And how do you get to know your sheep? The only way I know is to spend time with them. Lots and lots of time with your kids. Building that relationship. The more time you spend with your child, the better you get to know your child. The more time you spend with them, the better the relationship, the stronger the relationship. So I don't know why, but these pictures, when I uploaded them to this computer, they showed up sideways. But I think you'll be able to see what it is anyway. So my daughter, Eliana, really likes to go fishing. And so I took her fishing when we were on vacation. We went down to Arkansas in December. It was a little chilly, but it was still warm enough where's those pictures? We have those pictures coming up. Yeah, back one, I think. So Eliana wanted to go fishing, so I took her fishing. We stayed in a cabin. It was a really nice cabin. There was a lake that was on the premises, and we went down to a local country store. You know, one of those grocery stores. Like I said, I don't know why I put it up there sideways, but I thought I'd give the fish a little kiss after I caught it. I didn't really kiss it. I didn't really touch it to my lips. Come on, that's gross. So anyway, we went down to the local country store, and I was told they have bait there. And so I go up there, and there's this lady who works there, and I said, excuse me, I was told that you have live bait. Is that true? And she said, yes, it is. I do have live bait. She said, now, do you want worms, or do you want minnows? And I turned to Eliana and I said, let me translate. That's Arkanese for minnows. She said, y'all want worms or minnows? I said, minnows. Man, that takes me back. I remember. We lived in Arkansas for quite a few years. I'm like, yep, I remember. I learned that language. They have a whole other way of speaking down there. I said, we'll take the minnows, please. And so we came out with this bag, and we used that. And we caught 3 different fish that day. And it was really exciting. But I took Eliana to do that because she wanted to. And I said, man, this is an opportunity for me to spend time with my daughter. Turns out, Christian didn't want to go fishing. Josiah didn't want to go fishing. So it actually got to be one-on-one time with my daughter, which I cherish those times, right? And we had a good time, and we have pictures and good memories. Now, I wish I could say I'm this rock star parent that always knocks it out of the park and spends time, all the time that I'm supposed to spend with my kids. I can't stand up here and tell you that. There's weeks that go by. We get really busy as parents, don't we? We have work to do. We have these things that pile up, and we just have these busy weeks, and we don't spend time with our kids like we ought to. There's some weeks, a whole week will go by, and I'm like, man, I don't feel like I spent hardly any time with my kids this week. Man, I got to do better, right? And I know that, and I recognize that, and I try. So I'm talking to myself up here today, okay? I'm talking to myself. You know, this lesson, as I was preparing it, it hit me and said, man, I got to do better. I got to try harder. The strong relationship you have with your kid is what enables you to do all those things that we're supposed to do as our kid's shepherd. You can't leave them if you're not around to know that they're on the wrong path, can you? The only way you know that something's not right in their life is if you're around them and you observe and you go, whoa, something's off here, right? Because you've spent so much time with them, you go, something's off, something's different with my child. I need to have a conversation and lead them in the right direction. You can't feed the sheep, teach them if you're not around. One of the points that I'm going to talk about next week is that we need to teach our kids when opportunities come by. We call these teaching moments, right? And these teaching moments come by, and if we're not there with our kids, they can pass us right by, and we miss them. We miss opportunities to speak into their life and teach them. You can't protect the sheep if you're not around your kids. If you're not spending time, you're not around them, you don't see the dangers that they're getting into, and you can't protect them and shield them from those things. So Andrea and I told you, we don't claim to be expert parents by any means. We actually hired a parenting coach recently. And she was teaching us, she said, one of the things that's key is relationship. And she said, you need to block off, even if it's just 10 minutes a week, you need to block that time off with your kids doing whatever they want to do. She said, now, as long as what they want to do isn't illegal or going to hurt others, within reason, say, hey, I want to spend 10 minutes with you a week doing whatever you want to do. And so we're making this for Josiah, our 6-year-old. So I can only imagine what he's going to say when I say, hey, buddy, what do you want to do? We're going to do whatever you want for 10 minutes. What is that thing? Who knows what he's going to say? That kid, what he might pull out of the hat, But I'm going to do it, whatever, as long as it's within reason. But she said, the reason why it's so important that you build relationship, that you spend that time building relationship, is because she said, whenever you give consequences and you punish, it disconnects you from disconnects parent and child, right? It's a disconnecting moment whenever you give out consequences. And so you need to spend the other time when you're not punishing them or giving them consequences, building that relationship and making it strong. Does that make sense? Okay. So we have to build relationship. We have to build trust in our kids. Very important that they trust us as their shepherds, as their parents. This is where the saying, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, is very, very true. Right? They're not going to let you lead them. They don't care how much you know until they've seen that you've demonstrated that you care. That you care. And we build trust through time. Through time. One of the amazing scriptures in the Bible to me is when it says, Jesus came along, he was walking along the beach, and he said to these people, he said, come, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. Drop your nets from fishing, and I'll teach you how to fish for people. And I've always been amazed. It says they dropped their nets at once. They dropped everything. They just dropped it and said, okay, and they left their families, and they started following Jesus. And I always thought that was amazing. Like, what did he say to them? Like, how did he say that? He must have had some supernatural presence about him that made them say, okay, yeah, we'll drop everything and follow you. I always thought that was amazing. And then one time I was at this discipleship conference, and the speaker who had studied discipleship of, people who are learning to follow Jesus for years and years, he said, did you know that Jesus had spent 1 year building relationship with them before that moment happened? He didn't just call them from out of not knowing them at all. He had been building relationship with them for a year before he called them, and that's when they dropped everything. I go, I didn't know that. I never knew that. And that makes so much more sense. Of course he had been building a relationship with them. One of the questions they asked Jesus in Matthew 9, they said, why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? Right? He was frequently seen eating with people, having meals with these unsavory characters, right? That the religious leaders would never spend time with and be around because they were sinful. And you're not supposed to be around sinful people. And Jesus overheard them. It says he heard their hearts and what they were thinking. And he spoke up because they said, why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? And he knew their thoughts, and he goes, listen, it's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I have not come to call the righteous to repentance, but sinners. They need me. They need my help. They need my guidance to get them on the right path. And how in the world am I going to guide them on the right path if they don't even know me? I've got to spend time with them. I've got to eat with them. I've got to build relationship with them so that they learn to know me and trust me. So that when I say, hey, God doesn't want you on this path, he wants you to go this way instead, they trust me, they believe me, right? Jesus demonstrated that he loved people by spending time with them. He spent time eating with tax collectors and prostitutes and people with leprosy. When everyone else in the world had discarded them as worthless, Jesus showed them through his actions that they are valuable in God's sight and they are worthy of God's time and attention. One thing my dad did when we were growing up is he would take us to play pool, one kid at a time. And I remember when he first did this, he took my older brother, Barry. And Barry and my dad have got their jackets on. They're getting ready to leave. And I was like, hey, where are you going? And my brother said, Dad's taking me to play pool. And I was like, well, that's not fair. My brother was the oldest. Barry's the oldest. I'm the middle child. I said, that's not fair. I want to go play pool. And my dad said, don't worry, you're next. I'm going to take you next. Just you and me. And sure enough, a week or two went by, and he took just me. And then a week or two went by, and he took just my sister. It was really cool. I got to spend time just with my dad. And me and Andrea have found this place downtown. It's in Easton. It's called Pins Mechanical. And they have bowling, and they have these arcade games. And lo and behold, I saw this arcade game called Mario Brothers. Not Super Mario Brothers, the original, just Mario Brothers. And I said, that's the game. That's the game they had at the pool hall where my dad used to take me. So I went and I got to play it, and I was like, oh man, let's bring back memories. But looking back, I think that was such a great thing that my dad was doing. I don't know if he heard it somewhere or whatever, where he picked it up, this idea of spending time with your kids one-on-one, individually. And I think that went a long way to build relationship. I cannot emphasize the power of building relationship through spending time together. Again, I'm talking to myself here with our kids. And so your first next step is make an appointment with my kid this week. Do that, even if it's just 10 minutes. Make an appointment to spend time with your kids. Say, I'm going to block off 10 minutes with you every Tuesday or whatever. Every Tuesday night, we're going to spend time together doing what you would like to do, as long as it's within reason. All right, we need to build trust through a willingness to sacrifice. So one of the things Jesus pointed out why his sheep trust him in John 10 that we read is he said, I lay down my life for my sheep. I laid down my life. In other words, he was willing to sacrifice for his sheep. And they saw that. And they saw and they knew that Jesus loved them. When they saw that, Jesus' death on the cross, now, they didn't put all the pieces together until after the fact, right? They didn't understand as it was happening when Jesus was dying. But after the fact, when they looked back and the Holy Spirit helped them put the pieces together, like, wait, oh, Jesus died for my sins, for the world's sins, to take our place, the punishment that should have been ours. They realized, man, Jesus was willing to sacrifice for me? Like, he must have really loved me, right? And so that made them trust him even more. I love the story I found about Ken Griffey Jr. How many of you remember Ken Griffey Jr. who played baseball? Yeah, he was a really great baseball player. And one year he chose not to attend the Players' Choice Awards to receive the Player of the Decade Award. You think that's a pretty big deal? Player of the Decade? I mean, that's amazing. Junior beat out 3-time MVP winner Barry Bonds and the 4-time Cy Young Award winner Greg Maddux for the honor. This award is a big deal. He joins the ranks of baseball greats Wagner, Cobb, Root, Fox, Williams, Mantle, Ray, Mays, Rose, and Schmidt. So why didn't he go to receive this prestigious honor? Because his son, Trey, who was 5 years old, was playing his very first baseball game, and he didn't want to miss it. You think that message spoke volumes to his son? Like, yeah, he may not have understood it when he was 5, but he knew later, my dad skipped out on going to get an award of the decade to watch me play ball. That sacrifice meant something to his son, and it built trust. And then once you have that trust, you can do the things a shepherd needs to do. Jesus spent time with his followers. They slept out under the stars together. They spent time around campfires. He had teaching moments with them. He ate meals with them. And because of that, because he built that relationship, he was able to say some difficult things to his disciples at times. There were some very hard teachings that he had to give them. But because he had built that relationship, he was able to speak and say difficult things into their lives. A strong relationship is everything. Only when we have that trust built up will they trust our leading. When we try to give them our advice, they listen to us because they know we are trustworthy. Only when we have that kind of trust from our kids will they listen to anything we have to say when we try to teach them. Only then will they trust us when we're trying to protect them. When we tell them that, this friend is not a good influence on you. They're going to lead you down a bad path. They'll trust us because we built up that relationship with them. So the next step is think about what I could sacrifice to show my child I care about him or her. Maybe that's something you want to do this week. Think about what I could sacrifice to show my child I care about him or her this week. And I want to tell you something. In our time, in our culture, there's a lot of messages going around that the world would have you believe. And I want to just encourage you, don't believe the lie that your kid doesn't want to spend time with you. And maybe some of you have even kind of picked up on that, and you've come to believe that from the culture that, oh yeah, once your kid reaches a teenager age, they don't want to spend any time with you anymore. Or, yeah, they don't want to be with their parents anymore. They don't want to hang out with you. You're not cool anymore. They just want to hang out with their friends, right? I want to tell you, don't believe the lie. Deep down, they want to be with you. Deep down, they know that your presence, you being with them, is what gives them a sense of security. They feel safe around you because you've developed that relationship. And so make it a point to spend time, to hang out with them. And by the way, also, it's never too late. Maybe you're hearing this message today and you're like, it's too late. They're already too old. I don't care if they're adults. It's never too late. You can still start investing in them right now. You invite them to hang out with you. You invite them to spend time with you. And don't let up. And don't give up. Keep reaching out to them. Keep showing that you care about them and that you want to build a relationship with them. There's a great statement made in 1 Peter 4:8. It says, above all, love one another deeply because love covers over a multitude of sins. I've read that verse many times and chewed on it and thought, what does this mean? What does this mean? Love covers over a multitude of sins. Here's what I think it means. When you make it a point to build a relationship and spend time with someone, when you mess up, if you have that strong relationship built up with them and you've demonstrated you love them and you care about them, when you make a mistake, and we will, right? And we know we will, because you laid that relationship foundation, they will forgive you of your mistakes more easily because they know you love them. Does that make sense? Because you've taken the time to invest in that relationship, they will overlook your mistakes more easily because you built that relationship. I want to point out leading in other leadership situations real quick. In case you're here and you're like, I'm not a parent, but you lead in some other way, like maybe you're a church leadership or business leadership. I think this is a good place to say, we have a lot of meetings together as with our team. We have all these meetings. And how many of us know that we're not at our best in a meeting? Because most of us don't like being in a meeting. And so we're already like, man, can we just get this over with? Right? Can we just get this done with? We need to spend time with our team members outside of meetings doing non-work things. I was at this conference one time. It was for missionaries. It was talking about people who were going into the mission field, and they said, you're going to have a missionary team that you're going to go to this other country with, and they said you need to spend time together just having fun and hanging out. And they said this phrase, the team that plays together stays together. And I think that's so true. And that reminded me, preparing for this message, I'm on some leadership teams that we're only seeing each other in a work or business type environment. And we need to get out there and play together. We need to hang out together. We need to have some meals together that's not work related. The team that plays together stays together.
I agree.
So that's your next step, is hang out with your leadership team, doing something fun, non-work related. That's your third next step.
Get a plan, Jeremy.
Right, here we go. We're going to do this. We're doing this. We're doing this. I've already got a plan for a cookout. We want to have our team over, have a cookout, and just hang out and have a good time together. Maybe watch a movie. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Play some games, something. We're going to do it. And then the last point I want to make is goal setting. All right, if we're supposed to be shepherds, then we need to know where we're trying to lead our kids to, don't we? if one of our main jobs is leading them, do we even know where we're trying to get them to? Like, what is the end goal? What is the destination? What do we want our kids to look like after we get done raising them? What skills do we want them to be able to have when they become adults and they get out on their own? Have you stopped to think about that? And if you haven't, we need to. Because we can't lead our kids if we don't know where we're trying to take them. I'm talking about actually sitting down with your significant other. If there's two of you trying to raise your kid, if you're a single parent, then maybe you sit down and you write down a list and you get an accountability partner. And you say, hey, will you help me be accountable? Will you hold me accountable to these things, to these goals? The Bible talks about goal setting. Proverbs 17:24 says, a discerning man keeps wisdom in view, but a fool's eyes wander to the ends of the earth. We need to keep our end goal in view. To fail to plan is to plan to fail. If you aim at nothing, you will hit it every single time. Yes. You will hit nothing every single time if you're not aiming for something. The businesses that are successful, the churches that are successful, the organizations that are successful are ones who have set goals for themselves. They said, okay, here's our goal for our organization. And then they made an action plan to get to that goal. The parents who are successful had in mind how they wanted their kids to turn out, and they put a plan in place of how to get their kids to that place. Here's something to think about. Instead of just wondering what our kids are going to turn out to be like, why don't we mold them to be what we're trying to get them to be? Good kids don't just happen by accident. The parents who raised good kids, they had a plan. They knew where they were trying to take their kids. And so let's review the keys to parenting like a shepherd. Our kids have more than just physical needs that need taken care of. So a good shepherd fulfills all of their needs as the whole person. A key to being a good shepherd is making some goals. Sit down with your spouse, set some goals, and then make a plan. And then the third major key is a strong relationship. And I can't emphasize this one enough. It's so, so important. To do all the other things that you need to do, you have to have a relationship, to lead them, to feed them, to protect them. It all flows out of relationship. So the next step is make a list of goals for your kids. This is your homework for the week. Make a list of your goals for your kids. Physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. In all those areas. Where are you trying to get your kids to? What is the goal? And then make a plan of action. How are you going to get them there? Even if you don't have kids. You know, I see some teens, some young adults in the room. Even if you don't have kids yet, man, this would be a great thing to do. Say, if I ever have kids, what would I want? What skills would I like for them to know when they grow up and they get out of the house? What things are they going to need to know? I can tell you one thing that's super neglected is finances. Kids don't know how to handle their finances. And then they get out in the real world and they're clueless how to handle their money and they start drowning, right? That would be a thing to write down. I want my kids, before they're 18, to know how to do a checkbook, to balance their bank statement, you know, how to put away and save for things. I just threw that one in extra because I just thought of it right now. All right. That would be a great one. You know, the schools are starting to implement financial classes, and that's good. But ultimately, it's on the parents. We can't rely on the schools. That's our responsibility as parents. We're the ones who are going to be held accountable. Were they ready to launch once they became adults? It's not the school's responsibility, it's ours. And so we've got to make sure this happens.